All right, good morning, everyone. Tad Stevens, CPEthink.com here. This morning we have Jeff Bourgeois to talk about Pillar 2 in his eight pillar series. Pillar 2 is marketing and networking. Can't talk this morning. Jeff, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Tad.
All righty. A couple of housekeeping items. If you've been to one of our recent webinars, you know we've changed our webinar system. Everything you need to do to register and join the webinar is done inside your My Courses page. Your certificate of completion, the link to take the one question exam will be available if it is not already available. As soon as the webinar is over, you just click that and you answer true, affirming that you did attend the webinar, and it will generate your certificate. So that being said, anyone have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat. I will answer when I can or get them to Jeff when I am thinking he has a better answer than I do, which is most of the time. So please feel free to ask questions, be interactive. We're going to go pretty fast, so let's get going. And Jeff, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Tad. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pillar 2, Marketing and Networking. And this is probably, in my opinion, one of the most exciting pillars. And the reason is this is what allows us to determine who we work with, allows us to determine the kind of work that we do, and it allows us to attract those ideal clients that really make it worthwhile coming to work in the morning. So the goal should be, I really love my job. I love coming to work, whether we're an employee or an owner. But if we're the owner, the great news is we can shape our firm deliberately. And I think the most important piece of that is picking who we want to work with. So about me, just very quickly, I'm an author and educator. I'm a consultant to the accounting industry. I provide one-on-one coaching. I provide group coaching. And I like to do some consultation to small to mid-sized firms, and I'm a technology agitator. What I do is I research the technology out there and I help my clients implement that technology. Before I became full-time consultant and coach, I spent 25 years in the trenches doing taxes, all that wonderful stuff. So I've been there, done that. And I'm a huge fan of social media, and I strongly recommend any firm of any size that's looking to grow, consider social media as a great option for you. Now, I won't go into detail, but last week we talked about operations and operational efficiency. Today we're going to talk about marketing and networking, and then in coming sessions we're going to talk about the sales process. We're going to go further into niche development, which we'll introduce today. We'll talk about pricing, how you can add some value, whether it's value pricing that you implement or fixed price agreements. We'll have one session completely focused on technology. For the record, everything I do is focused on technology, but that one session is pure technology. Then we'll talk about other services you can offer. And last but not least, we wrap up with practice management. So the key to all that I do, and I talk about technology, and I want to give you the caveat. A lot of people hear me speaking about technology and they think, wow, great, I can automate things and I never have to talk to my clients again. That's not true, completely false. My goal with technology is you automate the repetitive, mindless stuff like chasing paper, dealing with, high-level questions. You want to automate as much as you can so that you can actually spend time building relationships. So in terms of building relationships, Pillar 2 is the cornerstone. This is where we actually start to tell our story. So today we're going to cover, I'll just give you a high-level overview of marketing options. I'll give you some ideas on what an ideal client should look like. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about networking, because realistically, networking is something where I believe we can really make immediate results in our business. And networking is really good if you're a partner in a smaller firm, if you're sole proprietor, and honestly, it works right up to, I would say, the national firm level. But if you're a solopreneur and you're looking for immediate clients, networking is probably one of the fastest ways to do it in the real world. I do occasionally have sessions, and we'll talk about that a little later. Online networking can also be very effective, so we'll get to that. But that's the hope of what we'll cover today. I'll go fairly quickly. If there's questions throughout, I'll try and answer them. If I'm going to cover it later, I'll say we'll get to that later. If it's a long-winded answer, I'll leave it right till the end. So my goal is we'll finish at about 10:02, and we'll leave 10 minutes for questions. If there's a lot of questions throughout, then we'll finish right at the top of the hour. Before we jump in, there is a question: are people able to access Pillar 1? The answer I'll give is I believe so. Tad, if you could answer that to everyone in the live, in the chat box or the Q&A box. I think Tad will have to share a link for that.
Yes, it's not there yet, and I'll explain why in the chat box, but we're getting it there. It should be there in a couple of days.
Great, thank you, Tad. Okay, so first question I always get from accountants, actually it's never a question, it's a statement. The statement I get from accountants is marketing's a waste of my time. I don't want to learn how to be a marketer. I'm an accountant, not in marketing. Okay, so that's 3 statements, but basically those are the things I almost always hear from accountants. Now I'm going to flip that around, and when I ask accountants, what's your biggest problem in your practice? Usually it's finding new clients or finding new good clients. Usually it's finding new clients because most accountants aren't that picky. We're happy to get a client, so we'll take what we can get. I'm here to say, and again, I was an accountant for 25 years, worked in public practice, ran my own firm. You can't be in public practice if you don't have some sort of marketing mechanism. Now, most accountants I know have the default of the profession, which is I rely on my client base for referrals. If that's the case, and you want to just type in the chat box, I want this to be very interactive. So if you rely on referrals, and that's pure and simple, your 100% source for new clients, can you just type yes in the chat box? Again, I'm not taking track of this. I just want to see. And if you have other areas that you use, I want you to type an emphatic no, all caps with an exclamation point. So just use the chat box. Oh, we got 2 no's. Oh, a bunch of no's. I'm impressed. 1 not applicable. So I'm curious about that one. We'll come back to that. So let me maybe give you a little bit of perspective. I'm impressed. There's a lot of no's, and I'm guessing the ones that didn't answer are yeses and don't want to admit it. Again, I'm not judging. So one of the things I'll point out is if you're currently getting all the client leads you want, all the referrals you need, you know with certainty how many new client referrals you'll get this year, absolutely referrals work. And one of the things, if I'm talking to people and they want to grow quickly, I strongly recommend put a referral system into your current practice where you're deliberately asking clients for client referrals. Now, the problem I have with most people with referrals is there's no system, there's no plan, there's no consistency, and we're really just hoping that our clients like us enough to bring us new clients. So again, if you are relying on referrals, great place to start, but it's not the end of it. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox for a second. First, I think it helps if we define what marketing means to us. So in my context, I want marketing to focus on telling our story. So again, whether we're a small firm, big firm, whatever size we are, we have a story to tell. So if we're a large firm, the story is probably going to revolve around, we're a large firm, we work with multinational corporations, we can help them solve these problems. We're big like you, we understand your big problems. If we're a small firm, this is where it gets exciting. Our message can be a lot more personal. So for example, I see a lot of firms that are starting to market. One of the first things they do is they'll list their passions. So I know one firm that was very passionate. One of the owners loved bicycle racing. So he listed on the website, I love bicycle racing. I ride in all of these charity events for bicycles, where bike racing is part of it. And really, they tell the story around their passion. Believe it or not, one small firm, they loved animals. Every single person working in the firm had multiple pets, just a weird coincidence. But what they did is they all put their names on the site, and then they said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a pet lover. Here's my favorite pet, and here's why." And what it did was people out in the real world would read these and say, "Wow, I want to work with this firm because I happen to have a dog that I really like, and they're dog lovers too, so they must be good people." But the key is, if you're passionate about a charity or a business cause, um, whatever it is that you're passionate about, make sure that that's represented on your website. And we'll get to that in a bit. But the idea is we want as many ways for people to connect with us as possible. So marketing is telling our story and reaching the audience that we want to reach. So I'm not a big fan of mass media because it reaches the masses. It's hard to target. But if we know what we actually sell, and again, let's participate in the chat box if you would. What do we as accountants sell? And I love asking this question because I'm always surprised by the answers. But what do you think it is that we actually sell? And try to think beyond the obvious, but I'll take any answer. Oh, great. Great answers. Great answers. Usually, most of the time, what I get from people is we sell time, we sell a tax return. So people think that that's what, oh, I love that one, David. People think that time and the tax return, for example, are the service we sell. But a lot of the answers I'm getting in the chat box, the one that I love, customer service is top, definitely. We sell ourselves. That is correct. We're selling that image. Peace of mind is my number one top favorite answer. And I think that's what we need to think about. There's another one here. David said cure from pain. And relationships. So peace of mind, trust, and cure from pain. So that's what we sell. We don't sell our years of education. We don't sell a block of time. If you've ever had a client come in and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy an hour of your time, and I don't care what the result is," I'd love you to share how you manage that. So if you have managed to sell just time, by all means throw it in there. But most of the instances when I talk to a client, a small business, they're interested in peace of mind. They just want to know that the government's not coming after them. And they want to know that you know how to solve their current problem. Now, if I haven't convinced you that marketing is fun, I'm going to just briefly cover why we should focus on marketing. And plain and simple, marketing allows us to shape our firm. So if you there's two types of firms out there, and some will argue there's more, but I'm going to say there's two. There's the deliberately structured firms where they pick who they want to work with, they do the work that they enjoy, and the staff and key management, everybody's deeply engaged, the clients are loyal and happy. The other type of firm, and I'll admit to having been in this many times, in fact, in my earlier days working for accounting firms, I've seen many firms that are, I call them accidents. They're the firm that happened to us while we were waiting for something else. So let's say, for example, and I'll paint a picture of both. The accidental firm, they have a client who happens to be a doctor. They love working with the doctor. He's a great client, great fees, everything, fun work. Then the doctor happens to have a patient who is an electrician, and one who is a chiropractor, one who's a dentist, one who's in direct sales, one who does e-commerce. So that doctor loves the firm so much, he refers all of his patients and says, you got to go see my accountant. He'll take away that pain you've got, or she'll help give you peace of mind. That is an accidental firm because you suddenly have clients in multiple industries, and it's not uncommon. Now, it is rare that you have that one client that brings you a whole bunch of clients all at once, but it's not that uncommon that you'll get referrals from multiple industries depending on who you work with as existing clients. Now, the problem with that particular scenario is you become a jack of all trades. You have to learn a little bit about a whole bunch of different industries. You have to learn about, unique issues for the e-commerce person, the unique issues for the doctor, the electrician, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a deliberate firm, and again, this starts with marketing. One thing I'll say right now is nothing here should be construed as saying throw everything out and start over. So what I always tell my coaching clients, focus on the current clients that you have. They got you to where you are today. Nurture them, respect them, appreciate them for their fees. But if you're looking to grow, you want to focus on one particular niche, or maybe, again, depending on the size of the firm, maybe multiple niches, but you really want as narrow a focus as possible because deliberate firms can then be built. So an example of a deliberate firm, I have a contact who works 100% with technology startup companies. Their entire reason for being is to serve technology startup companies. And their focus is obviously online, recurring revenue stream, e-commerce, etc. But what they've done is they've got so narrow in their niche that they're able to tell you with certainty right up front, are you a good client for us or not? They're able to tell you, well, we can improve your systems and processes. We can help you with the technology to run your business. Here's the things we do when we work with our tech companies. They've learned the language of the tech sector. They know what buzzwords are being used. They know what their language is, what their priorities are. And so what they're able to do is, number one, whenever they do their marketing efforts, they're deliberately trying to attract more tech companies. Now, the exciting thing is, and this applies to any niche, any industry, tech companies tend to know other tech companies who tend to know other tech companies. So when they get a client referral, 99.9% of the time, those referrals are other tech companies. So again, that's how you build a deliberate practice. And honestly, the company that goes after tech, they started as a traditional bricks and mortar accounting firm. They had traditional clients in all industries. What they did was they set targets. They started pursuing the tech sector, and once they reached their targets, effectively they replaced the revenue from all of their other clients. They actually sold off their non-tech clients to another traditional accounting firm. So again, focus on your current clients, but if you're looking to grow, pick a niche. And this gets really exciting because you can specifically build your practice based on the type of clients you want to work with. So, Tad, I'm going to get you to launch the first polling question.
All righty. Get that going here. All right. If everyone would take a few seconds to vote, we do not track these. Your certificate is not based on these. This is a NASBA requirement because they don't believe that everybody's going to sit at their PC or at their phone or their pad or whatever device they're using. So we have to ask 3 of these. This is number 1. A few more people need to vote, please. Come on, gang. Only takes just, and we don't track them. We don't grade them. You're not going to be held accountable for them in any way. Do you have a marketing plan in place? Okay. There are still several haven't voted, but we're going to go ahead and close the poll so we can keep moving. 3, 2, 1. We're going to end the polling, and we're going to share the results. And what we have, 31% do have a marketing plan. 34% do not. 21% are working on it, and 14% chose not to answer. Okay, Jeff, back to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tad. And thank you to everyone for answering. So just to warn you, we have 2 more required polling questions. We'll get those out of the way. Tad heads up, one's after this slide. So I'm going to spend the bulk of my time today on 3 slides. And the reason I only have 3 slides is I really want to stress how important these slides are. Now, of course, I have more slides than that, but there's 3 that I think are very important. Marketing options is probably my number 1 pay attention slide. So if you've got alternatives, I would love to hear it and I'll welcome them. So by all means, use the chat feature. Tad, there's a question. Somebody didn't see the poll. I'll let you deal with that. But we're going to talk about pros and cons of each of these options. So the traditional on the left side, progressive on the right. Arguably, website can be both traditional and progressive. I'll explain that. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a huge fan of general media and print advertising. And the reason for that is it's hard to reach a specific audience. So for example, let's say you are a firm and you've purchased some airtime on the radio, or you've purchased time on the television or something like that. So radio is my favorite as an example. Let's say you're driving in your car and an ad comes on the radio and you're like, wow, that's great. Think about how many things have to stack up and play in your favor to find that one person who hears your message at the exact time they need it and when they're ready and able to do something. So again, picture yourself in the car, you hear an ad that you're like, oh, I need to deal with that. That's a great company, or I wanted to look at that. Most of the time, I miss those. You know, I'll hear it on the radio and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to deal with that. And then somebody slams on the brakes in front of me and I forget about it. And then the next time I hear it, I'm thinking, oh, I need to do that. But what's missing is my ability at that exact moment to take action. And I love it when radio advertisers put a website up. Odds are good I'm not going to check their website while I'm in the car. Odds are even better I'm not going to remember when I get there. So mass media really is luck. It's finding that needle in the haystack because you need to find somebody who's ready to take action at the moment they hear your ad. So I personally don't think there's any value in it. Brochures, I find brochures a little bit of a funny thing. Most accountants that use them have them sitting in their office. So in order for a brochure to be effective, a prospect off the street has to come in and ask for one and know that you have one. Or one of your clients needs to remember to take it and give it to their friend. Brochures can be very effective, but most of the time they gather dust on the reception desk and at some point they become an eyesore. So brochures, unless you have a plan for how you're actually going to get them out there, rarely produce any results. Now, the good thing about brochures, usually really cheap. There's online services you can get them. I'm a huge advocate of brochures being properly used. The last time I did a brochure run, I think we got somewhere around 500 brochures for $150. So brochures have their place, but not sitting on the receptionist desk. The other one is signage, and I find this very amusing. Um, my brain is trained. I notice accounting firms. I'm able to pick them out. But for the average population, most people, most firms, their signage is some long name that nobody can pronounce. And usually they forget the accountant's part. So it'll be, 5 long last names, LLP or LLC or something. Um, it's odd, but for some reason, a lot of us don't think to put um, CPA or whatever our credentials. But signage tends to be very boring, and again, it relies on somebody driving past your office at the exact moment they're thinking, "I really need a new accountant. Where can I find one?" So signage to me doesn't work. And the last thing about traditional is the website. I know a lot of accounting firms, and one of the things I do is I consult with them on their marketing efforts. I help them produce effective results. Um, there are a lot of website templates out there that big service providers will give you, and typically it says, here's where we're located, here's our office hours, and this is the list of services that we offer. Now, the problem with that is usually those services are listed in our code. We prepare 1120s, 1040s, 1099s, W8, blah, blah, blah. Like, usually it's something that other accountants would go, oh, they do that, great. But for the small business person out there, typically they're not searching, I need help filing 1040. They'll be searching for having issues with IRS or having issues with personal taxes. So a lot of these websites, the first mistake they make is they're very traditional, they're boring. My wife jokes if she sees a website with blue and gray, is that an accountant or a funeral home? Accountants, for some reason, really love blue and gray. So a lot of sites I see are blue and gray themed. So they're very, I'm going to say boring, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but they don't offer much of value. There's no personality of the owners in there. Now, just a quick question, and again, if you can type it in the chat, yes or no, do you have a website that generates clients for you? So if you guys could just, okay. Oh, we got a couple of yeses. That's great. If the answer is no, and you do have a website, I'm guessing that your website falls under the traditional category. Okay, now let's transition over to a progressive website. And I can tell you stories all day long about firms that are really progressive and they're doing incredibly well. The great thing is it's not that hard to do. And because there's so many people out there that are not doing it, if you're in that minority who is willing to do the 10% that your competitors aren't, you can really, really make some progress. So a website, to be progressive, it has to engage. It's not just a digital billboard that sits there with your firm name and credentials and tells the world, hey, we do 1120s or 1040s or whatever. It's got to be engaging and interactive. So again, when I talk about niche development on Pillar 4, the great thing is if you go after, let's say, for example, tech startups, you can have somebody in-house who can write some content, you can hire writers, and you can offer some content. Here's how you run a better tech company. Here's how you can run a better dental practice, things like that. But you give them something, and then more importantly, you encourage them to engage. So little things like social media sharing, which we'll get to, but if you have an article on how a dentist can run a better practice, you can encourage your clients who are dentists, hopefully that's your niche, you can encourage them to share it with other dentists. So the key about a progressive website is it deliberately tells your story and it engages people. So there's some sort of back and forth. Really, what you want to do is get people interested. If little rule of thumb, if you did your website 2 years ago and haven't touched it, you're probably traditional. A progressive website has somebody, whether it's in-house or outsourced, somebody updating it regularly so that you're always getting new traction, new viewers, new eyes, and new shares. And it doesn't have to be onerous. I see firms getting results. Instead of doing a quarterly newsletter or monthly newsletter, they'll do a weekly blog post. So again, the goal of the website is to share information and to demonstrate your expertise. Now, a lot of accountants will say, well, I'm not going to tell somebody how to do this. That's what I get paid for. What I would respond to is we're not telling them step by step, here's how you fill out a corporate tax return. We're telling them here's what's important, here's why you need to fill it out, here's some common pitfalls. The idea is somebody can read it and say, you know, I'm glad they told me, you know, one of the things I love is top 5 mistakes business owners make when they file their own tax return. That's a great thing because they'll relate to it and go, yeah, I did that. What you're telling them is what the mistakes are, not how to fix it. And then at the end, you can say, if you want more information on how to fix this, please contact one of our experts in the office. We'll be happy to work with you. So give away a little something in order to get something back. And it's just human nature. If you're sharing information that's useful and they value it, they will share with their friends and colleagues. So a really interactive website. Again, this is just to put this in perspective, website is a slow growth strategy, but it's absolutely essential if you want long-term, sustainable, predictable growth. So any firm I know that is looking for more than single-digit growth year after year, a website is the cornerstone of their growth. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about networking events. That's my next big slide. But short version, there's a lot of groups out there, things like Business Networking International. There's a lot of organized groups out there. The key is they're not for everyone. Some people will tell you, oh, I joined one, it was terrible. For the record, I've been in really great ones. I've been in really bad ones. They were all under the same banner. It really just depended on who is involved in that particular group. I'm a huge fan of attending networking events, and some of my secrets, I'm going to put them in the chat function. So Better Business Bureau is an amazing place to meet strong businesses. They're usually looking for good accountants. Lots of communities have a Better Business Bureau. If you don't have one, I guess maybe look, see if you can start one. Meetup.com is one of my favorites. You can search online for business networking events in your area. And again, if you have a niche that you focus on, you can search for those niches. City of Calgary, which is close to where I live, there's about 30 different groups on meetup.com that focus on tech startups, for example. Eventbrite is another one. They have organized events. Usually it's small business owners creating it to meet others. Sometimes it's lawyers who want to meet business owners, insurance people. With Eventbrite and Meetup, you can do those yourself. So networking events, great to attend. Personally, I want to control the outcome. I want to know what results are. I like to host them. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then educational events, you can do it live in your office if you've got a boardroom. You could do it online virtually. You can rent local community centers. What I've done in the past, and I found very useful, is I want to educate my clients. Again, if you focus on a niche, you can afford to educate them collectively as a group. So what I would do is have a monthly session, and we'd have an event on how to put together a better set of books, or how to manage your paper, or what I did was I took bottlenecks and pain points in my firm, and I created educational events to help others, my clients, adapt and adopt those things so that they change and solve my pain internally. So I help my clients to help myself. One thing I really recommend, if you work with a lot of external bookkeepers, I did educational events for bookkeepers. I showed them how to put together a file. I showed them what information I needed, showed them common errors and issues. And it took us 1 or 2 hours a month. But what we ended up with was a network of about 10 regular, consistent bookkeepers who, whenever they had a new client, they would refer them to us. And more importantly, we knew the quality of the bookkeeping that we were going to get, because we had trained those bookkeepers on our systems, our processes. So again, a lot of marketing can be seen as very selfish. It's very self-serving, but by serving others, you can help yourself. And then the last piece on this slide, and then we'll launch the poll, is social media. Now, a lot of firms will come to me and say, okay, how do I approach, the long list of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Where do I start, and how do I manage all these things? My advice to you is find out where your ideal client exists, where they're engaging, and that's the only platform you need or want. So if you're going after professionals, for example, like doctors, dentists, I would suggest probably it's LinkedIn. If you're going after smaller, more personal businesses, typically that's more like Facebook. If you want to promote events that you're doing, a combination of Twitter and Facebook are good, for example. So let's launch the next poll, if we could, Tad.
You bet. All righty. How much time per month do you spend on marketing activity? Everyone would take a few seconds and answer.
And put that firm wide. So in your firm, how many hours a month are being spent?
And if you've already done it and submitted it, don't worry. This will be great. Okay, we've got about almost 90%. Well done, gang. Give it another 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. In the poll. Share the results. 60% less than 10 hours. More than 10 but less than 25 is 11%, and 11% for more than 25 hours, and 17% don't want to answer. So back to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tad. So that is very interesting. Now, I'm talking about growth, and that's sort of the whole point of 8 pillars for exponential business growth. So I'm going to assume most people who are on today's session are looking to grow. So again, we're among friends. This is a safe place. In the chat function, just tell me what your goals are for growth. Are you looking for 10%, 2%, 20%? I'm coaching one firm right now. Their goal is 100% growth in the next year and 300% growth by the end of 3 years. So I'm just curious where people are at.
Can you see those, Jeff?
I can. Thank you, Tad. So, okay, somebody put in not applicable. I'm curious. So, not applicable as in you don't want growth, or not applicable as in you don't have a number? Again, not judging, I'm just curious. Okay, so far I'm seeing ranges from 5% to 50%. So this is, okay. So we have one that wants to maintain only, they don't want to grow, just want to offset attrition. Okay. So that raises a very good point. Thank you for that. If we're not growing, we're dying. and that's not a judgment, it's just pure simple fact. If we don't have some mechanism to bring us new clients, picture a firm, let's say it was founded by one individual, that individual is doing all the work. It was founded 20 years ago with 100 clients. Now, if they just maintained, didn't market, by now I would assume, let's say 20 years, I would assume probably half of those clients have wandered off. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this firm, but if they're not looking for new clients, you always have to know what your attrition rates are and be able to offset that. So at a minimum, we need to have some growth mechanism in place so that we stay put. Excuse me. So if we're not growing, we're dying. And really, if you look at that hypothetical firm of 20 years ago, if they didn't do anything, and I see this time and time again, the accountants service their clients well. The problem is businesses go out of business, clients move and take their business with them, people get divorced, the business gets split, liquidated, whatever. People have business fallouts, you know, maybe a partner leaves, takes the business with them. But the reality is there's a lot of reasons we can lose a client. We want to make sure at a minimum that we're offsetting that attrition. And the problem with attrition is usually we never see it coming. I am coaching a client right now. He has had a very successful practice. In the last year, his 10 largest clients have all moved on in some way. And in each case, I think most of the instances, they either sold or they were absorbed by a competitor. And he's, for the first time, you know, he's approaching 65. He's panicking because all of his value, his retirement, was based on the assumption that he'd keep all of these clients till the age of 65. He'd have a bundle of business he could sell, and he'd retire happy. He didn't see the attrition coming. So when it comes to building our practice, we want to know what that ideal client is, and we want to know where we're going to grow. So if you have an industry or a niche that you focus on, please type it in the chat. And again, you can respond just to all panelists, so I only see it in TAD. But what I want to stress here is if you're looking to grow, if I haven't mentioned this, if you're looking to grow, you want to pick an ideal client and grow in that direction. And the reason for that is it's infinitely easier to find another and another of your ideal client if you know who they are. So a couple of niches, one does nonprofit. Oh, one does radio stations. That's fun. Construction, running, and military. That's interesting. And construction, okay. So the great thing about knowing who your ideal client, clients with children with disabilities. Okay, so those are all excellent niches because you can identify them. What I like to think about a niche is I can close my eyes, I can envision who that person is, really get some clarity on it. So what industry, what geography, what size, what's the ownership structure. Think about all the things that are unique about your ideal client. And again, this is about, we're going to start a marketing program. We want to reach somebody. Who is that somebody? So instead of relying on the luck that we're going to reach that one person sitting in their car listening to the radio, let's focus on, say, we want to work on the radio station. We can figure out what size of stations we want to work with. We know, you know, you can go to Yellow Pages, you can do online searches, you can find out who the radio stations are within your geographic area. If you know who you want to serve, it is ridiculously easy to find them. Okay, so we got clients in divorce situation, local and national, international students, business people. So the more clarity you have on who your client is, the easier it is to find them and reach them. And so I would challenge each of you, the homework I give my coaching clients, we literally spend the majority of our first month talking about who's your ideal client. And it is funny because a lot of people say, wow, this is repetitive. You've told me this before. And, when are you going to come up with something new? And usually what I say, and again, this comes with respect and a desire to help, I usually tell my coaching clients, I'll come up with new ideas when you implement the ones you have and you actually start to see the results. Again, not picking on accountants, but as a group, we tend to be control freaks. We like to see results. We want something proven. We're slow to implement unless we've got proof. The problem is you can't prove that the ideal client concept works unless you actually do it. I can give you case study after case study shows that it works, but until you experience it yourself, it's not going to work for you. So homework from this, if I can be so bold, you don't have to submit it, but go away and think about who your ideal client is. Now, one thing I'll say, a given firm can have more than one ideal client, but you can only market to one ideal client at a time. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, just again in the chat box, let me know if you have an ideal client that you deliberately pursue, or has it sort of been random? But the idea behind an ideal client is you want to know exactly who this person is. You want to know where to find them. Where do they hang out online? What do they do? And I actually, when we get into the niche development, which is pillar 4, I go through step by step how this ideal client converts into a marketing plan. Today, I just want to introduce it. And the idea is for those of you who actually deliberately go after an ideal client, I just want to know, is it easier or harder than going after everyone? And is it more profitable or less profitable than going after everyone? So if you could answer that. My suspicion and my experience so far is if you know who your ideal client is, usually it's easier to find them, easier to attract them, and easier because you're getting deliberate results. Because you're an expert in their field or industry, you're also able to charge more. Okay, so a little bit of a mixed bag. Some say it's easier because you're more focused. Yes, it's easier. Yes, it's more lucrative. And we've got one that says can't say, so I guess probably we'll say that's on the fence. And one says it's more profitable, not always easy to find. Okay, so usually if you can't find them, what you should be doing is you should be able to close your eyes and really say, here's an example one of my clients is working on right now. I target international real estate investors who are investing in the Greater Toronto area. Typically, they're married, middle class, have savings, and they own at minimum 5 investment properties. So that's very specific, and those are easier to find. Now, show of hands if you, well, I guess, again, chat box, if you do networking with any results, so if you get good results, share it in the chat box. I'm going to give you a referral checklist. The best book I've found on this subject is Bob Burg, Endless Referrals. If you've read it, by all means, share your thoughts with the group. But what I would strongly suggest with networking is you want to create a deliberate and systematic process. A lot of accountants will go to a networking event, they'll try something once, and they'll tell me, that didn't work. Networking, I actually had one, his exact words, networking is dumb. What else do you have? Stop wasting my time. And so being the wonderful coach that I am, I did what he thought least likely to happen, I tagged along with him to the next networking event he went to. And the deal was, if he could prove to me it didn't work, I wouldn't make him go again. We got there, and the rule was he couldn't talk to me during the event. He had to do what he normally did. He went, found a drink, found some food, stood in a corner with his handful of business cards, and he waited for people to come to him. Now, if that's your version of networking, I guarantee it's going to fail. The other thing that was very interesting was body language. When he didn't have food or drink in hand, he stood there with his arms crossed and a furrowed brow. Now, I asked him about it, and he said, well, I was concentrating on what I would say. And, so he was very much unapproachable to people. So networking, you got to be out there. You got to shake a couple of hands. The other extreme, I've seen people, they'll go to networking events and they deal out their business cards like a Vegas blackjack dealer. They throw them around the table, say thanks, and they leave. And everybody at the table saying, who was that? You don't want to be that person either. So my rule of thumb, I always create a goal when I go to a networking event, and my goals are usually modest. I want to meet 3, 5, 10, whatever that number is. And once I've reached that number, I can decide whether I stay or not. But the key is I'll have a good quality conversation. And what I love about Bob Burg's book is you start the conversation with, can I help you? So instead of, you ask, how can I help you? Or, when you introduce yourself, don't say I'm an accountant. Say I'm a business advisor solving the pain of small business. Say something other than accountant, because the minute you give them a simple label, they go, oh yeah, I know an accountant. Okay, I got it. The conversation ends, and that's whether you're a dentist, doctor, lawyer. You want to say something unique so that they'll ask a follow-up question. Now, I also believe, so you ask them, say, what challenges do you face in your business? How can I help you? And again, if you're in a niche and you're talking to niches, what you can do is go away. Let's say they're a dentist and they have cash flow management issues. Make sure you write that on the back of their card and send them an article that you or your admin people can find on the internet about managing cash flow for dentists. You don't have to write it. You just have to send it to them. What that does is it shows that you care about them and you're willing to share. Okay, Tad, I'm going to launch the last polling question.
All righty. Last poll, here we go. Networking. How much time per month do you spend on networking activities? Less than 10, 10 to 25, more than 25, no answer. Okay. All right, voting is improving. Well done, gang. All righty. A few more, got about 75, 80% have voted. We'll give it another 3, 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. In the poll. Share the results. 71%, less than 10 hours. 10 to 25 is 14%. More than 25 is 6%. Well done for those guys. And then 9% no answers. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, Tad. So now one comment. Okay, firm-wide answer. Thank you. One comment, I go, I converse, I collect cards, I follow up, get no response. That happens sometimes, but the key is what's in that follow-up. And I'm happy to have that. If you want to email me, I'll give you my email at the end. There's something missing in that sequence. I would strongly recommend giving a quick read of Bob Burg Endless Referrals. Honestly, this is probably in the history of books I've read, and I read a lot, probably in my top 10, maybe top 5. I would say this book single-handedly changed everything for my practice, how I viewed things. So definitely worth a read. And I'll share my email address if you want to follow up afterwards. Okay, So homework for those of you who are just looking to learn a little bit today. I'm a big fan of action. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't take action, that knowledge is wasted, it's pointless. One expert in efficiency once said that knowledge workers are the cheapest commodity out there. Action takers are the hardest to find. So what separates the successful from the average is their ability to take action. So I'm going to recommend, and it doesn't have to be fancy, create a marketing plan for your firm and focus on how much time, energy, effort you're going to spend. Because time and energy are big things. And I know we can all do the math on this, but figure out what your return on investment is from each different piece of marketing that you undertake. And really, if you're not generating a positive return on investment, stop doing whatever those activities are. So if, for example, you're doing the marketing, you're doing networking events, and you find after a year or two you haven't gotten anything from a networking event, focus on other areas that work. Again, it depends on firm size and priorities, but make sure you have that marketing plan. Next step, really focus on who your ideal client is. Go as far as to give them a name. I have one coaching client, she works with plumbers. Her favorite client is Joe Plumber. So she also works with electricians. She's got a Joe Electrician. But what she does is when she's writing the marketing, she's writing a letter to Dear Joe. And she's thinking about the problems, what keeps Joe awake at night, what the challenges are. And again, picking the areas you want to put your effort in. I love local chamber of commerce. Economic development offices are great resources. Almost every larger community has a place, and there's a few online centers as well, where small businesses can go to get advice. So networking can be as simple as taking a banker to lunch, a commercial insurance person, a commercial lawyer. Know who's going to bring you clients. The other piece I find a lot of accountants don't have is a good customer relationship management system. So CRM for short. You should have something where you can track your interactions, track your follow-up, track next steps. And always you want there to be a next step. So what are we going to do next? So the key is marketing helps you differentiate your firm. Networking allows you to deliberately grow by reaching your ideal client. So that concludes the content piece. My email is jeff@dreampractice.ca. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you're having any issues regarding CPE or the platform itself, you can email tadservice@cpethink.com. And for those of you who've got a minute, I just want to share, I run a mastermind group, and what I do is I'm working with like-minded accountants, and what we do is we help give each other objectivity, we develop systems and processes, we do strategic planning, we offer mentoring and accountability. And some of the things we're focusing on, goal setting, the ideal client, we're doing niche development, we lead that into marketing, pricing, and sales. So if you're interested, we do structure it. I won't go into the layout of it, but basically we meet privately, you and I, once a month. We do some strategy, goal setting, and then as a group we meet twice a month, holding each other accountable. And then there's a monthly educational session where we go in depth on, for example, marketing. So if you're interested, it's a 3-month commitment. It'll be July through August. We're going to start July 5th. We're only taking 24 participants in total. As a special offer to TAD's group and the CPE Think audience, the first 10 that sign up, it's $375 per month. Or if you're after 10, it's $750 a month investment. What we do is we work with you, we help you grow. So if you're interested, the website you can go to is dpmastermind.eventbrite.ca. And with that, I'm going to wrap up and thank you all for your time and attention today.
Okay, super, Jeff. Please put that link in the chat box if you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And to everyone, I did check. We have fixed the problem we had last week where the Take Exam link was not showing up immediately. It is there now. So if you would like to hook up with Jeff, please do that. I know his stuff is very good. I've been working with him for a couple years now, and just really enjoy that and everything that I do with him. If anybody has any questions, Jeff's email is in there, jeff@dreampractice.ca. Our email is in there, service@cpethink.com. Again, any questions that come up after the webinar is over, let us know and we will get right back to you. We will get this up as a self-study course, and we will have the recording of the webinar in the webinar course that you've already signed up for, probably within a day or two. So look for that. If you want to watch it again, you're welcome to do that. And that is all I have. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. If anybody has any questions, though, we will hang around for a few minutes and answer those, so please do put those in the chat box. Okay, there's a couple coming in. Currently unable to take the exam, says preview exam. Okay, Kyle, I'll check that, but we'll get that taken care of. Amy, the certificate, you should be able to take the one question final exam that is to the right of the course on your My CPE Think page. Anybody else?
Now, Tad, I do have to run, but if anybody wants to email me, follow up, jeff@dreampractice.ca. And thank you for hosting me, Tad. And thank you most of all to everybody who stuck around and gave us their attention.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for attending. If anyone else has a problem getting their certificate, just open a support ticket, and we will get there. Sonia, I'm not seeing the link. Okay, well, you got to tell me which link. I've got a lot of them out there. Anyway, any questions at all, hit us up at support. We'll get right on it. And thank everybody again for attending the webinar. Appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Bye.